It should have been routine, just another boarding line before sunrise. But when Celia Whitmore stepped into the priority access lane at CLT, something shifted. It wasn't her coat, her stride, or the quiet toad at her side. It was the silence that followed her. The kind that only comes when people don't expect you to stand where you're standing. And when she offered nothing but a boarding pass and composure, the system responded the only way it knew how, by quietly trying to erase her. But this time, she came prepared. The terminal heater whirred faintly, but it wasn't the cold that made heads turn when Celia stepped into the priority access lane. It was how quietly she stood her ground. Charlotte Douglas International Airport never truly slept, but at 5:38 a.m. on the Monday before Thanksgiving, it did blink slowly. Dim ceiling lights cast long shadows on the polished floor, where the scent of overbrewed coffee clashed gently with the sweetness of cinnamon pretzels drifting from a nearby kiosk. An elderly couple shuffled toward Gate 18, murmuring about window seats. A young boy sat cross-legged, humming softly into a tablet screen. And in the lane reserved for first-class and executive platinum travelers, Celia Whitmore paused just long enough for eyes to land and linger. She had flown this route before, never with leverage sealed inside her tote. Wrapped in a dark wool coat, the collar turned against the chill, Celia stood with her analog wristwatch exposed and ticking quietly, each second its own reminder. She held no designer luggage, no badge-laden carry-on, only a worn canvas tote over her shoulder, and a paper copy of the Charlotte Observer folded neatly under her arm. Her presence was not loud, but it had texture, a silence that didn't shrink. Behind the check-in counter, Darren Kyle glanced up. Early 30s, his face was clean-shaven, smile-trained, posture casual. His fingers paused briefly on the keyboard when he registered who was approaching. "Can I help you?" he asked, polite but with a tilt in his voice, like she might have stepped into the wrong doorway. Celia didn't explain. She simply held up her phone. The boarding pass on the screen glowed in the soft terminal light. Darren scanned it, then exhaled through his nose, eyes darting across the information. "Right. First class," he said aloud, drawing out the second word, half a second too long. As he handed the phone back, he leaned toward the colleague beside him and whispered, not quietly enough, "Thought she was in the wrong line." Celia heard. She didn't react. She reached for the cuff of her coat, adjusted it, and stepped forward without changing pace. Not even a sideways glance. The security checkpoint ahead pulsed with mechanical routine. Bin slides, rubber-gloved hands, plastic trays. Celia moved through the line efficiently. Her tote was placed carefully in the tray, her coat folded with intent. But as she approached the scanner, a TSA officer motioned subtly. "Random check," the agent muttered, gesturing toward a secondary table. No eye contact, no reason offered. Her bag was unzipped. The agent sifted through a paperback novel, a small leather case of toiletries, a single black pen. Then he reached the sealed envelope, cream-colored, thick, bearing the words "Confidential," legal in bold, serif print. "What's this?" he asked. Celia met his gaze, unbothered. "Review documents." The agent tilted the envelope slightly, as if weight might offer answers. He didn't press. With a shrug, he slid everything back in and waved her through. "You're good." She collected her things without urgency. The analog watch ticked again as she slipped it back on. She did not thank him. As she walked past the metal barriers, something shifted. Not in her step, but in the system behind her. A silent marker was applied to her file. Verification override. Invisible to passengers, known only to those monitoring back-end operations. It would travel with her through the gate. Celia reached gate 42 with 10 minutes to spare. The corner seat by the window was unclaimed, and she took it without hesitation, folding her coat neatly and placing the canvas tote at her feet. She pulled out her newspaper, pages still creased from the morning press, and began reading the editorial as if she had nowhere else to be. The boarding agent, a woman in a navy vest, glanced at her screen, then at Celia's name, then back to her screen again. Her expression didn't change, but her hand moved to her earpiece. She pressed it in, whispered something low, inaudible. Her eyes flicked once more toward the woman in the corner. Celia didn't look up. The watch ticked on. She didn't expect warmth, just accuracy. But on this flight, even accuracy came selectively. The cabin lights glowed with that particular shade of soft gold reserved for first class. Warm in tone, cold in intent. The air held a sterile elegance. Tray tables polished to a shine, lemon-scented towels folded like origami, a hum of hushed greetings filtered through well-practiced smiles. Celia slid into 2A with the quiet of someone not interested in being seen or unseen. Her tote settled beneath the seat in front of her, the sealed envelope removed and placed into the seat back pocket with precise care. She adjusted the cuffs of her coat and reclined slightly, watching the gate withdraw and the jet bridge disappear like a curtain between stages. The words from earlier still echoed. Thought she was in the wrong line. They were no longer just a memory. They were a prophecy. As the plane began to taxi, Megan Drury stepped into the aisle. Mid-40s, tailored uniform, the kind of posture that spoke of polished hotels and professional detachment. She moved with brisk efficiency, passing out warm towels with a practiced nod. Row 1 received them without needing to ask. The man in 2B, Mr. Chapman, gray suit, reading the Wall Street Journal, barely looked up as Megan gently placed one in his hand. Then she moved to row 3. Celia watched the space where Megan had been. No towel, no pause, no eye contact. She didn't adjust her expression. She didn't look around to confirm whether anyone else had noticed. Instead, she clasped her hands in her lap, fingertips briefly brushing the envelope edge through the fabric of the seat pocket. Drink service came next. A junior attendant rolled the cart slowly, taking care with the crystal glasses. Celia watched the rows ahead receive options. When the cart reached row 2, Megan returned, this time standing directly beside Mr. Chapman, offering a quiet murmur of choices. He selected a Bloody Mary. Megan nodded, poured it smoothly, handed it to him. She glanced at Celia, then looked beyond her as if she were a part of the seat's upholstery. The cart rolled on. Still, Celia remained still. The envelope in the seat pocket felt heavier than its weight allowed. Meal service approached, the scent of roasted herbs rising faintly above the recycled air. Megan returned with her notepad, taking orders with a smile she rationed like it cost her something. 2B ordered quickly. Megan jotted it down with a flourish. Then she turned, skipped past Celia again. Celia waited, counted to 5, cleared her throat softly. Not a demand, not a challenge, just a sound. Megan paused. Yes? She asked, surprise painted too precisely to be genuine. I wasn't asked, Celia said calmly, eyes level. Megan tilted her head slightly. Oh, she said, glancing at her manifest. I wasn't sure you were eligible. There was no venom in the tone, just a smile. Small, tilted, professional. Celia didn't respond. Megan offered 2 options, cod or chicken. Cod, Celia replied. When the tray arrived, the fish was cool, the rice gummy, the vegetables limp. Celia removed the lid, stared at the plate for a moment, then replaced the cover gently and slid the tray an inch forward, untouched. A low voice drifted from behind. She's in first? The man in row 5, khakis and entitlement. Speaking to no one, but loud enough for everyone. That's what it says, Megan answered, adjusting a cart with exaggerated calm. But I've seen crazier things. No one corrected her. No one offered a glance of solidarity. Mr. Chapman shifted in his seat but kept his eyes on his paper. Celia turned toward the window. The clouds outside were the color of unpolished silver. Her fingers, resting now on the envelope, remained still. Somewhere near the front, the curtain separating the galley stirred. A man in a darker uniform with a clipboard stepped into the aisle. Bryce, lead flight attendant. His steps were firm, smile not quite formed. Excuse me, ma'am, he said as he reached row 2. Just a quick rescan of your boarding pass. System flagged something. Celia pulled up the pass on her phone, held it out without speaking. Bryce scanned it, stared a bit longer than necessary, then nodded. Glitch. Probably. I'll make a note. He moved on without apology. The flight hummed around her, low conversation, tray clicks, a crying baby somewhere far back in coach. Celia breathed in slowly, measured. Her silence didn't feel small. It felt heavy, measured, stored. When Megan returned, her tone had shifted. A smile, this one practiced with years of soft refusals, settled on her face. Would you mind moving to 17D? she asked gently. For balance. Power doesn't always speak. It waits. And in waiting, it collects proof. The hallway outside holding room 3B buzzed with fluorescent light, and none of the urgency that had followed Celia through her morning. She sat in a molded plastic chair, legs crossed, hands folded on her canvas tote, as if she were waiting for nothing more than a delayed boarding call. But inside her stillness, something had shifted. Focus had replaced composure. The slow rhythm of her breath no longer concealed uncertainty. It measured it. Celia once told Naomi, not in warning but in strategy, "Let them underestimate you. It's the only leverage they give willingly." Now 2 uniformed attendants escorted her without touching her, but with just enough proximity to imply authority. "We just need to clarify a few details," one said, not meeting her eyes. Holding room 3B was tucked beside a maintenance corridor, bland walls, flickering lights, and a table too clean to feel used. Celia stepped inside without hesitation, noting the camera in the corner, the laminated evacuation chart, and the absence of a clock. Time here wasn't meant to be measured. It was meant to be forgotten. Reed Lamont entered seconds later, the guest services lead. He held a clipboard like it might protect him, his blazer too crisp for the lines etched into his forehead. Behind him, Angela Carver followed, compliance officer, tablet in hand, expression neutral, hair pulled back into a knot of control. Reed cleared his throat. "Ms. Whitmore, there were reports regarding conduct on board, some discomfort expressed by crew." Celia said nothing. He glanced at Angela as if seeking support, then tried again. "You declined a seat reassignment. There was mention of uncooperative behavior. Am I being detained?" Celia asked quietly. Reed's mouth opened, but Angela spoke first. "No, ma'am. This is a standard post-arrival screening. For classification purposes." Celia reached slowly into her tote, pulled out a black leather wallet, unzipped it, and placed a slim card on the table. Then came the envelope. Cream paper. Sealed. Unopened. She slid both forward. Reed hesitated, then lifted the envelope with the careful confusion of someone who knows they're holding something they weren't meant to touch. He opened it. His eyes scanned the contents once, then again. The color drained slightly from his cheeks. Angela leaned forward. Her fingers froze mid-keystroke. "Genesis Financial?" she murmured. Celia didn't nod. She didn't explain. Reed looked up, blinking too fast. "You're the deciding vote?" Her fingers twitched once on the edge of the tote. Her voice remained level. "I was. Until this morning. Now I'm the verdict." Angela's eyes narrowed, recalibrating everything. "You activated oversight authority?" Celia didn't answer. Instead, she reached back into the tote and placed a second envelope on the table. This one, red-sealed, marked with a narrow band of gray. Override, Internal Review Clause, Genesis Protocol 9A. Silence folded over the room like a velvet curtain. Reed straightened. "Ms. Whitmore, You filed a behavioral flag based on crew reports. Do you know what that triggers under Clause 9A? Celia's tone didn't rise, but it did harden. Angela swallowed. Immediate cross-department review, with surveillance reconciliation and compliant shadow reporting. Celia nodded once, a motion more of confirmation than approval. The seal on the second envelope remained unbroken, yet the message had already detonated. Angela slowly closed her tablet. Her professional detachment flickered at the edges. Then she looked up. "What would you like us to do?" Celia didn't blink. "Gather everyone who touched this flight. We'll start there." The man in the suit asked what she wanted. She answered with silence and a sealed envelope. Celia sat alone at the long glass table in Compliance Room 3B. The water bottle in front of her remained unopened. Her hands, folded on her lap, didn't fidget. The air conditioning hummed evenly above, too cold for comfort, but not enough to draw a complaint. The atmosphere had that staged tranquility particular to places that process people, not truth, sterile, controlled, designed to exhaust dignity without showing its hand. She had told Naomi once, during one of those long, measured conversations, "You don't win by raising your voice. You win by raising the cost of ignoring you." The door opened with a soft push, And Preston Hale entered in a charcoal suit that had probably cost more than Celia's monthly mortgage, if she still had one. Late 50s. Lean, manicured confidence. The kind of man who spoke in damage control and dressed like denial. Behind him, Angela Carver followed, tablet clutched to her chest like a shield. A younger staffer trailed behind, offering bottled water, avoiding eye contact, then retreating silently to a corner. "Ms. Whitmore," Preston said, his smile practiced, his voice pitched for calm. "I'm terribly sorry you've had to deal with irregularities. We take every report seriously." "I can assure you." "You didn't know," Celia interrupted, her voice low but clear. He blinked. "You weren't supposed to," she continued, reaching slowly into her tote and producing a second envelope. "You were supposed to behave anyway." She placed the envelope on the table without flourish. It bore the Genesis seal, again. This one embossed with a thin silver thread curling through the edges. Genesis issued override directive. Angela's breath hitched before she could hide it. Preston's smile thinned. "And this is?" Celia didn't answer. Angela leaned forward, scanning the visible header. "Fiduciary Holdback Audit Triggers Compliance Clause 7.14, her voice trailed off. The weight in the room shifted. The background hum of the air felt sharper. Preston straightened. "These codes are live?" "They went live the moment your gate agent whispered into a headset instead of scanning a boarding pass," Celia said, lifting the bottle cap and twisting it open with a soft click. Preston's throat moved. "Ms. Whitmore, I hope you understand this was not personal," Celia offered. "I agree, it's worse." Angela looked up at him, voice barely audible. "The audit protocol was triggered 5 minutes ago. She didn't wait for approval." Preston turned pale. His next sentence caught in his throat, then took another shape. "What are you asking for?" "I already asked," Celia replied, sipping the water. "A list of every employee who touched this flight, from check-in to final contact, including the one who flagged my bag without logging it." "That's quite a request," Preston muttered. "No," Celia said. "Quite a record." He bristled, fingers tapping lightly against the table. "What happens now?" Celia set the water bottle down with the softest sound of control. "That depends," she said, "on what your system recorded versus what it hid." Angela's tablet buzzed once. A green icon pulsed on the upper corner of the screen. She tapped it, then inhaled sharply. "Level 3, Stakeholder Identity Match Confirmed," she read aloud. "Audit stream live." They didn't raise their voices. So the system raised the playback. Room 6A was colder than necessary, lit by overhead panels too bright for the hour. A wide screen occupied the front wall, already looping a muted video feed. Chairs were arranged in 2 tight rows. No hierarchy, no escape. The tension was thick, like static before a storm that no one wanted to name. Angela Carver sat with her back straight, tablet on her lap, fingers locked. Preston Hale hovered nearby, arms crossed, jaw set tight. Lisa Divers, head of internal audit, stood at the screen's edge. Calm, unreadable, her dark blouse crisp against the pale walls. She didn't bother with introductions. Instead, she pressed play. The first clip, check-in footage. Darren Kyle at his station, glancing at Celia, blinking once, then handing back her boarding pass without scanning it. A second camera angle showed him leaning to the side, lips moving. Subtitles appeared beneath the feed. Thought she was in the wrong line. The room didn't breathe. Next, cabin feed. Megan Drury moving briskly through first class. She handed towels to passengers in row 1, then 2B. She bypassed 2A entirely. A pause. Then laughter, low and sharp, as she stood near the galley, whispering to the junior attendant. "Probably points. She doesn't fit." The footage jumped forward. Celia seated, hands folded. The cart rolling past. No drink offered. Megan speaking again, this time after the man in row 5 leaned into the aisle. "That's what it says, but I've seen crazier." Angela's lips parted, but she said nothing. Another jump. Bryce, the lead attendant, asking Celia to rescan her boarding pass. His tone flat, explanation vague. Lisa let it run for a beat longer before she paused the screen. Then came the voice logs. Internal cabin comms, synced by timestamp. Her ticket came through some legacy thing, maybe. Doesn't look like first. Not worth the fuss. Mark it for behavior flag. Quiet, though. The file trail was next. A compliance screen appeared. Celia's profile, with a red triangle marked 37C. Behavioral concern. Passive resistance. Logged by a flight crew member 32 minutes into the flight. Lisa turned to the room for the first time. Her voice was soft, almost gentle. This isn't a service failure, it's patterned exclusion. Preston exhaled, short and sharp. Angela cleared her throat. Her voice was firmer than she felt. Effective immediately, she said, scanning the faces in front of her. Megan Drury is suspended pending full review. Darren Kyle is reassigned to domestic rotations. A Class B disciplinary motion is now active. No one protested. Megan stared ahead, lips pressed so tight the color drained from them. Darren looked at the floor. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing left to say. The screen dimmed. The room remained still, air heavy with the kind of silence that doesn't end a conversation. It begins a reckoning. Lisa leaned slightly toward Preston, voice low but clear. We haven't even pulled the lounge footage yet. Celia didn't chase Justice. She walked so deliberately that Justice had to catch up. The hush in the VIP lounge wasn't the kind born of luxury. It was recognition, delayed, and awkward, wrapped in the kind of silence people wore when words would only underline their failure. Naomi walked just half a step behind her mother, eyes scanning everything. The upright posture of the receptionist who now greeted Celia by name, the barista who didn't ask for a loyalty scan, the security staff who no longer checked anything at all. They passed through quietly, no applause, just adjustments. Naomi had once asked back when the audit reports first surfaced, but what if they never listen? Celia had only replied, they don't have to, they just have to answer. Across the terminal, Gate B6 came into view. Megan Drury walked past, her stride clipped, her uniform slightly less pressed than usual. Assigned now to a regional route. Short hauls, crowded cabins, no warm towels or platinum perks. She wasn't escorted. She wasn't shamed. But the shift in her gait said enough. She caught sight of Celia. Their eyes met, brief, unblinking. Celia didn't speak. She didn't flinch. She just held the gaze until Megan looked away. Inside the executive boardroom, glass-walled and brushed in quiet authority, Preston Hale was already seated. No tie this time. His expression held no pretense of command, just compliance. Celia placed the envelope on the table, then slid out a single sheet, signed and dated. No preamble. The merger will proceed, she said. But the bias audit stands. It's not a clause, it's a condition. Preston nodded. Understood. Naomi stood against the far wall, silent, watching her mother not demand power, but enforce it. The paper sat between them like a seal on a verdict. Nothing loud, nothing theatrical, just irreversible. Moments later, airport systems updated quietly across terminals. Flight 709, crew realignment confirmed, reassigned to domestic short haul. Stakeholder ID, active, protected. Compliance override, ongoing. No announcement, just consequence. In the lounge, Naomi stirred her coffee, then asked without lifting her gaze, "Do you regret not saying anything that day?" Celia reached for her own cup, paused, then answered softly, "Silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy." The old metaphor surfaced again. Naomi remembered the untouched meal. The cold fish served like a statement. "Did it hurt?" she asked. Celia's smile barely rose. It proved my point better than any speech could. She didn't board another flight that day. She stayed, while the system she had walked through now bent behind her, adjusting not just protocols, but perception. Justice didn't land with sirens. It clicked quietly into place, like a gate opening in a way it never had before. She never raised her voice, but somehow the room always quieted when she moved through it. At every step, Celia Whitmore chose restraint over rage, until her silence became the loudest truth in the building. The lesson wasn't written in policy memos or boardroom apologies. It lived in the way people stood when she entered. In the empty seat they no longer dared to question, in the systems now forced to audit themselves. Some victories don't come with headlines. They arrive like her, composed, undeniable, and right on time. And if this story echoed something in you, pass it along. Justice isn't always loud, but it always deserves to be seen.